Well, good morning. I love that song, that African Plain song. I love that song because, that thing reminds me that we're not doing this alone. From the towers of cathedrals to the faithful gathered underground. Like, there are people today gathering underground in the name of Jesus. It's just awesome that we're a part of that. We forget we're a part of something bigger. We're a part of that this morning. So good morning, Cape Coral Community Church. How are you? Good morning. Gosh, you guys are much more awake than 9 a.m. My name is Teresa, and I'm one of the pastors here. And we are on week 3 of a series we call I See a Church. Now, a couple weeks ago, David kicked off the series with why do we need church? And we talked about the reasons why we do it. And there's some really good reasons just to benefit your health and your well-being. And they've done studies and found that people who attend church just seem to be happier and have things going pretty good for them. But more than that, we talked about the fact that God designed us to be a part of something like this. That's what we were designed to do, and He wants us to come together as community, so that's why we need church. And then last week we talked about the fact that we are no different this morning than any other group gathering anywhere else in this city or this state or this country or even across the planet, right? We're just a group of people that are coming together. It's like any other social gathering, except for the fact that we've invited the Holy Spirit in. So that's a game changer, isn't it? Because once the Holy Spirit comes in, we're no longer just a social gathering. It's a whole different thing then. So that's what we talked about last week. So we've learned why we need church, why we need to come here. We found out what we come here for. We come together in the name of the Holy, and with the Holy Spirit present among us. We found that out. And now we're going to take a look at what we want to be while we're here. What does Cape Coral Community Church want to be? And see, what we want to be, and we're going to look at this week, is that we want to be a church that grows smaller as it grows larger. That's in your bulletin. I'm already hitting bulletin points. It's going to be a fun morning, isn't it? I'm already on the bulletin points. So we want to be a church that grows smaller as it grows larger. So what does that even mean? That doesn't even make any sense. It's an oxymoron. I love that word. Oxymoron doesn't even make any sense, does it? But hopefully I can help you make a little sense of that this morning, and hopefully it ends up being just a little bit easier than we think. Now, those of you who know me, and even probably those of you who just met me, or maybe just kind of know me a little bit, probably already know that I'm a mom, right? I'm a mom. I scream mom. This is the season of my life I'm in. I am a mom. I have my children, I have stepchildren, I have adopted children, I have a whole youth group of children. I call them my babies. I've got kids all over the place, and that's just the part of my life I'm in right now. I'm mom. Everything I do is mom. I'm even mom to people who are not that much younger than me sometimes, or maybe even a little older once in a while. I'm mom. That's just what I do. And as a mom, if you're a mom, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. We have what you call typical mom moments. You know what I'm talking about? Those typical mom moments. Those moments that we all stood and listened to our mom say to us. Those moments when you know that there's probably millions of women across this planet that have stood in your shoes and said the exact same words to their children. The typical mom moments. So for those of you who don't know those moments, or maybe you've just missed them, I don't know how you did, but let me give you an example of one. I had one not too long ago with my daughter. Back at the end of the last school year, she had come home, and the grades weren't quite as they should be. And when she was getting ready to come home from school, I already had my whole argument in place, because you know what? I knew exactly what the problem was. See, over the last few weeks, I watched things like her get really involved in that phone and that social media, right? I watch her ask me to go more places, do this on a Friday night and this on a Saturday night, and can I stay after school for this, and can I do that, and can I do this? So by the time I heard about these grades, I knew exactly what was going on. So when she came home, the very first thing I said, here's my typical mom moment. You are spending too much time being social. You're spending all your time with your friends. You're just spending all of that. You're putting all of your energy into that when you should be paying attention to your schoolwork, right? Moms, you've said that. You know you've said that. You've said it a few times. We all say it. School is not a social activity. How many times have you said that? It's not a social activity. And see, I am not complimenting her at this point. She is a social butterfly. I'm not complimenting that. I don't like that whole thing right now. No, I'm not. I'm disciplining her. There are more important things to worry about than being a social butterfly and having friends, right? That's things we say. But what's funny about that is, what is it that's more important? Well, getting her school done, her schoolwork done, right? So when she gets older, she learns, just like me, to ignore the relationships in her life and spend her time focusing on work and paying her bills, right? That wasn't exactly what I was going for, but that is kind of totally what I'm saying, isn't it? So see, that's kind of what happens to us as we get older. Like when I was a teenager like her, I had a lot of friends. I had friends all over the place, lots of them. And even as I got into my 20s, when I was in college, I had friends. I had lots of friends, and my life was all about my friends. And then I got into my later 20s, and I met my husband and started getting married and doing the marriage thing, and some of those friends dropped off, especially when you had kids and they don't. That doesn't ever work well, does it? So those things started dropping off, and then I got into my 30s, and you know, you kind of set into this rhythm of life that just doesn't really include your friends anymore, so you have a little less. And today, I've got a few, I guess, but I don't have a whole lot of them. I mean, here's the thing. I don't need friends. I don't really need friends, do I? I mean, I'm kind of busy, and if I have a friend and I got to spend time with them, I got to do things to have friends. So they're going to want to do things like go out on Saturday night. Well, I can't go out on Saturday night. I haven't even seen my husband all week. I need to spend time with my husband, and he'll be all upset, and then I'll have to make dinner and figure out how to get him all set up for the night, and it's just a lot of work. So I really just don't want any friends. I don't need them. I'm too busy for them. See, every mom in here is like, yeah. Thank you for validating me. Thank you. So I want moms, I just want you to sit there and enjoy it just for a minute, because now it's going to be over. Because it is a valid reason. My reasons are valid, and they're truthful, but they're not good reasons. See, we think we don't need friends. And I'm going to say that, I've said this before from up here, and I say this all the time. If you sit here and you think about the world which God created, I accredit this world that we live in to God's creation. And what he did is he created this masterful design, this ecosystem that just so perfectly works together. It's like a perfectly orchestrated orchestra out there, isn't it? Like every little piece of bacteria has its purpose. Every little bird in the sky, and even non-living things, water and sunlight and all of those things, they have their purpose. They all contribute to this overall ecosystem that keeps everything in balance. And if we would leave it alone, it would work really well, right? So if God did that, he took all this time and all this energy and put it into this perfectly balanced system. Why in the world did he take this creation called human beings and plop them down in the middle of all this perfectly working stuff and create them to live independently and alone and not relying upon the rest of this system or each other? Why would he do that? Well, guess what? He didn't. He didn't. It's not like he took a break from creation. He was on a roll with all this creation working together and then said, never mind, humans. He didn't do that. The theme carries through. He created us just as he created the rest of this ecosystem to work together, to rely upon each other, to be relied upon, just like the rest of this system out here is working. We're no different. And as far as being too busy, yeah, we're too busy. You know what we're too busy doing? We're too busy isolating ourselves. That's exactly what we're doing. Now think about it. You cannot say that anything in your life that you're too busy with was not by your doing. This morning when you woke up, really, the only things in this world that you have to do, you have to. You have to eat. You have to sleep. David tests that all the time. That's optional. You have to drink. You've got to get some water in you, and you have to breathe. But other than those things, other than that, what is it that you have to do? See, everything that is in our lives beyond that is a human add-in. We've added it in. It's a human thing. And see, this argument is nothing new. It's not like we haven't crossed this argument before. Actually, if you look, Solomon wrote a whole book on something just like this. Have you read the book of Ecclesiastes? Have you read? If you haven't read that, I want you to go home and read that. Because we're crazy. We run around saying, what's the meaning of life? I wonder what the meaning of life is. I don't know the meaning of life. Okay, there's a whole book in here called Ecclesiastes. Whole meaning of life is in it. Whole thing. And what Solomon finds out, there's a theme that runs through that book. Go home and read it today. There's a theme that runs from beginning to end through that book. And more or less what Solomon had found, he had lived a life. He lived a long life. He tried a lot of things. He did a lot of things, tried a lot of different ways. Kind of like we do. We run around trying this and trying that and trying to find our happiness and trying to find our contentment. We run around doing that. And basically, what he concluded was that every single human activity that we participate in from the time we're born until the time we leave this earth is very close to useless. Like chasing the wind. Have you heard that? You heard that saying? Like chasing the wind. He says it so many times throughout there, that we're chasing the wind. See, these arguments I presented you with, that I don't have time to invest in relationships with other people, I don't need them. You know, Solomon's heard them. He says actually in his book, I love this about Ecclesiastes. It talks about how anything that's happened now is nothing new. It's already happened before, and it'll happen again. Like, we haven't come up with anything new. We're humans still running the same little track that we were running years and years and years ago. And he talks about that we're still running that same thing. And then he talks about the fact that the relationships that we seem to look past. So many years ago, he figured this out, and we're still trying to figure it out. Listen to what he says in the 4th chapters of Ecclesiastes. It's verse 8. He says, "There was a man all alone. He had neither a son nor brother. There was no end to his toil, yet his eyes were not content with his wealth." He was all alone, and we're not content. See, we're intentionally isolating ourselves in the name of success, right? And Solomon so plainly states it, but we can agree with it. We're not content. We're actually some of the loneliest and most discontented people on the face of this earth. Really. Statistically proven, really. No joke. Solomon is saying in that verse, it's not good for people to be alone. It's not good to be alone. But Americans, more than any other country in the world, are more likely to be alone. They're more likely to live alone. They have a higher likelihood of living an isolated life. We just do. That's statistics. We just do. More than any other country on this planet, we are more likely to move away from our families. And not only do we move away from our families, we move more often. And we move farther distances than anybody else on this planet. I mean, think about it. Even our jobs we commute to. We are so spread out. And the thing is about isolation is the greater the isolation gets, the more that our demise comes. We don't live as long. We're depressed. We get sick. We're less happy. We actually tend to even be more violent. Violence increases in isolation. And if you take a look at the way different societies work, you will see that the more isolated the people are within the communities, the more violence there is. It doesn't work for us. So we run around saying we're too busy, but the reality is we're just too busy isolating ourselves, which is actually so ridiculous in this day and age. It's so ridiculous because connecting with people is incredibly easy right now, isn't it? I mean, so incredibly easy. At 16 years old, my daughter literally has hundreds and hundreds of friends on Facebook and Twitter. Hundreds. I don't even know if I know hundreds of people. Hundreds of people. She talks to people she went to elementary school with that she hasn't seen in years. Still talks to them. Some on a daily basis. She talks to people that she went to preschool with in Michigan. Still to this day. She's 16. You know how many years ago that was? That was a long time ago, but she's still talking to these people. See, communication is so common to these kids today. It's so common and it's so easy. Imagine how revolutionary that idea would have been to us as we were kids. If somebody would have told us that we would have a way to communicate like we do now, what would you have thought back then? You wouldn't have believed them. They're crazy. But look at the ways we have and see somehow what's happened in the masses. They have masses of friends. Is that somehow in these masses, we've lost the quality. And that's what we're talking about today, is that we want to be a church that gets smaller as it gets larger. So that we end up a church full of these little quality clusters of relationships. Do you see what I'm saying? These little these clusters all around that make up the whole church. See, that's what I love even about this room. That's what I love about this church. Because no matter how we slice it, no matter how great we are, no matter what we do, we are not going to fit more than 250 people in this room right here. Not going to happen. Well, without the fire department shutting us down anyway, right? That's what they're going to do. So we're not going to fit more than 250 in here. Like, we're not going to have one day be a service of 1,000 people like some of those bigger churches in the area. We're not going to have, imagine 1,000 people in here. Like, talk about uncomfortable. Hopefully you don't mind your personal space being invaded because, like, 1,000 people in here. That's never going to happen. And see, that's what I love about here. That's why I come to church here, because I'm not comfortable in a group of 1,000 people. So we can't fit 1,000 in here. However, we can have 5 services with 200 people in each of them, can't we? So then we have 5 small churches that make up the one big church. Do you see what I'm saying? We can grow smaller as we grow larger. But the only way that we're going to do that is we need to start putting priority on building healthy relationships, building and maintaining healthy relationships. And if this is going to truly have a priority in our life, we are going to see things in our life shift. Like our time, our energy, our resources, our attention is going to need to shift to these relationships if we're going to make them a priority. Because the thing is that we will never build a church, not the one that Jesus outlined in here anyway. We will never build that church without a solid core of healthy relationships at the foundation. We will never build that church that he was talking about. That's how it starts. That's the foundation we need. Peter talks about this in the book of Peter, 1 Peter, that's in your bulletins this morning too. It's 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 7 through 9. Listen to what he says about this. He said, the end of all things is at hand. That first statement right there is very important. The end of all things is at hand. It's kind of like you're going to talk to somebody who's in their last moments. The end is at hand. And the end is at hand much more for us than it was for Peter back then, right? Like, the end is definitely closer. We know that. So he's saying the end is at hand. And you wouldn't start off a statement with those words unless what you were going to say is really important. So let's see what he has to say. He says, therefore, be self-controlled and sober-minded for the sake of your prayers. Above all, saying the end is at hand, above all, above everything else, all the other stuff that you've heard, all the other stuff that I've said, all the other things that have gone, above all, he's saying, above all, what does he tell us? Keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins. Show hospitality to one another, and here's the kicker, without grumbling. So no grumbling. So that's important stuff he's talking about. So as we become a church that gets smaller, as we get larger, we have to know how to tackle this relationship thing. We have to know how to do it. So this morning what I want to talk about is the different types of relationships that we have in our lives. And I want you to get in your head all the different ones you have. You have all kinds of relationships. Even if you're kind of a loner kind of person, you still have relationships. You have a spouse, you have kids, you have parents, you have your boss at work, you have people in authority over you. You have some sort of relationship, right? So I want you to be thinking about those, because for each relationship you have, they're going to fall into one of these 4 categories we talk about this morning. And here's the best part, is each and every category is covered in here. There's some instructions, some specific instructions on what you do with those relationships. I think we need to know that if we are going to be a community of relationships. So let's take a look at that. Now, the first type of relationship that you may have in your life, that you probably do, are important relationships. So what are important relationships? They're the ones that you need. They're the ones that your life hinges upon. Let's think about this. Like if you're a kid in here this morning, you still live with your parents, you wake up tomorrow morning, parents are gone. First, you're going to be super excited. You're going to be like, woohoo, yeah, like, woohoo, party! And the party's going to be fun. Don't doubt it. The party's going to be fun for a few minutes. Until you start needing stuff. When you need money, or you need food, or you need a ride, when you start needing stuff, you're going to have a big problem with parents being gone. That's an important relationship. In my life right now, I wake up tomorrow, my husband disappears, I got a problem. He makes most of the money in the house. He's the father of my children. I got a problem. He's an important relationship in my life. So that's what important relationships are. And it's Paul actually, he writes a letter to the Ephesians. And it's funny because it's all about these important relationships. The Ephesians are trying to build a church. And I told you, a church of Jesus Christ is built on relationships. So they're trying to build this church, but they got their relationships all out of whack. The Ephesians have no idea what they're doing with the relationships. It's kind of like, it's like an episode of Dr. Phil. And it's like, well, let me tell you. Let me tell you here, Ephesians, what you got to do. It's that whole book is like a long episode of Dr. Phil, and he's filling them in on what they need to do. And he says to them, he actually addresses this important relationship thing. And if you take a look at, where is it at? It's in Ephesians chapter 4, verses 2 and 3. Listen to what he says and how you need to handle important relationships in your life. He's saying all those important ones, so start thinking of important ones as I read these verses to you. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. Humble, gentle, patient. Making every effort to keep peace. Now, does that describe your relationship with your spouse, or your kids, or your parents, or your boss? Yeah, boss is an important relationship. If they decide they don't like you tomorrow, you have a problem, right? Like you do. That's an important relationship. Humble and gentle and patient, is that your relationship with them? See, that takes effort. So with important relationships, what Paul is telling you to do, what we need to do with the important relationships in our life is we need to invest in them. Invest in important relationships. Invest in them. Because how are you going to be gentle and humble and caring and all these things that these verses are saying? How are you going to do that without investment? Relationships are a living organism, are they not? Like we treat them like they're just something that doesn't live and breathe and grow, but they actually are. We can't see them, we can't touch them, we can't hold them, we can't feel them, but they're alive, are they not? And they need care. They need care like we do, like any other living thing, they need care. So tell me right now, think about these important relationships and tell me, when's the last time you did a date night with your spouse? Or when's the last time that you spent some one-on-one time with your kids? I don't even care if they're grown and gone. When's the last time you spent some one-on-one time just with them? And like your boss. Like I said, your boss is an important relationship. Tell me when the last time that you stepped behind that nameplate on the door and said, hey, how's life? How's it going? Do you even know them personally? Your livelihood depends on them. Do you know them personally? Relationships are human. They need care like humans need care. We have to care for them. We have to take care of them. We have to invest in them. So now I'm going to go and we're going to dig. You guys love to dig, don't you? We're going to dig just a little bit deep because the next type of relationship are probably ones that you've got down in a little deep corner and you keep them down there because it's easier to deal with when they're not up here in your face. Next type of relationship is broken relationships. Sometimes we have important relationships that are broken. And see, Paul actually addresses this too. These churches, they covered everything for us. He talks to the Romans about broken things, because Rome's living, they're just, everything's broken around there. It's just broken. And what's happened to the Romans is that because everything's broken, the relationships are broken, sin's crept in like crazy. Sin's crept in, and it's causing problems. They've got problems every which way because of these broken relationships. But the coolest thing about the book of Romans is that it's almost like a letter of hope. Because he tells them that nothing is too broken that cannot be fixed through the power of Christ. That's what he's telling them. He says nothing is too broken that it cannot be fixed. So no matter how hopeless your broken relationship seems right now, it's not too big, it's not too great for Christ. It's not. And listen what he says about how we should treat these broken relationships. Listen to this. It's in the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 17 through 19. He says, "Do not repay anyone evil for evil." Well, wait a minute. What about the eye for an eye? What about that? No, he doesn't say that. He says, "Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone." That includes the person that you're mad at. "If it is possible, as far as it depends on you." He's not talking about what the other person's doing, done, or will do. He's talking about as far as it depends on you. "Live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my dear friends." See, what we do with broken relationships is we kind of get into this thing. What happens is somebody wrongs you, right? So you're mad. And so what you do is you wrong them back. And what they do is then they take revenge on you. And then what you do is you take revenge on them. And so you just keep running in the circle and running in the circle and running in the circle of revenge, 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 revenge. That's what you do. You do it forever. I've seen people do it for decades. Decades. Revenge, 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 revenge. Decades of it. And it'll continue to go with no end. There is no end to a circle, is there? It will, until somebody steps out of that circle. Somebody steps out and does something different, like not repaying evil with evil. So if you have a broken relationship today, if one popped into your mind as soon as I said that, and especially if it's an important relationship, what you need to do with that broken relationship is you need to restore it. Restore your broken relationships. Next point in your bulletin. You have to restore them. Can't leave them. Got to build them back up. Make them bigger and better than they were to begin with. That's what restoration does. Have you ever seen restoration of a building? It ends up better and more beautiful than it began. That's what you're supposed to do with your broken relationships. Now I want to go into the next type, because these are we got to dig way down to get those ones out, because those ones are even a little deeper than those broken ones. Those are harmful relationships. However, I want to tread carefully on harmful relationships, and let me explain to you what a harmful relationship is. A harmful relationship is one that harms you, either physically, mentally, or spiritually. That is a harmful relationship in your life. Now, we have to walk a very careful line, because we get all fun with this harmful word. We start throwing harmful around like it just applies to everything. Oh, well, he's mean to me, so that's harmful to my spirit. We use harmful probably way too much. And there are very clear instructions, different instructions, between broken relationships and harmful relationships in the Bible. Two different ways that you deal with them. So you have to stop to determine if it is truly a harmful relationship and not just a broken one. And I'm going to tell you, if your marriage is coming up in your mind, I'm going to urge you to try the broken route first. Because the plans are so different. Like I said earlier, a relationship that is broken, you restore. You restore and make it more beautiful. But a relationship that is harmful to you and your spirit, you sever. You sever it. So very different ways to handle these. So you want to be sure that it is truly harmful. And let's talk about how we determine whether it's just a harmful relationship. if you take a look in your bulletin, there's a couple verses under this point. And let me read the first one to you. It's from the book of Proverbs. It says, "He who walks with the wise grows wise, but a companion of fools suffers harm." So he who walks with the wise grows wise. So we can figure that out. But a companion of fools. So if you are in companion with fools, you suffer harm. Now let's take a look at that Corinthians verse. That's the next one in there. It says, and I love this verse because it's misused often, and I want to clear some of that up. It says, "Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness?" What happens to darkness when light comes in? It disappears. See, those verses are telling you there's a difference. There's a big difference between harmful and broken relationships. Harmful relationships put you in companionship with fools. So if you are in companionship with fools, that's a harmful relationship. Harmful relationships are with people who are unequally yoked to the point of detriment to you. Now let's talk about this verse, because this verse gets used and misused all over the place. And we have Christians that say, "Oh, I'm not supposed to be around the unequally yoked, so I can't be friends with you, you're not a Christian." If that were true, Jesus really screwed up. Really screwed up. He had the whole thing wrong, because that's all he did is hang out with unbelievers all the time. He had it wrong. That's not what that verse is saying. I want you to just pretend like we've got a hula hoop. Take your hula hoop and put your hula hoop around you, okay? The people that you allow beyond that line, beyond that hula hoop, the people that you welcome into your inner circle, the people who change the way you think, feel, who help you through things, who talk to you, who you bounce things off of, those people that come inside of that hula hoop with you, that inner circle of your life, those are the ones that cannot be unequally yoked. Those guys out there, yeah, we're friends with them, but we don't pull them into that inner circle. Those are the ones that cannot be unequally yoked. And if somebody's in that inner circle of yours, somebody who speaks into your life, somebody who gives you advice, somebody that you listen to, somebody that you look up to, if you have pulled them into that inner circle and they're unequally yoked, they got to go. That's what a harmful relationship is. It will harm your spirit. That's what he's talking about. It harms your spirit. It must be severed. And again, I want to clarify, because we take this and we sometimes apply these principles so generally when every situation is so very different. So don't apply general principles sometimes. And I don't know that Jesus intended that or God intended that. But again, if it's along the lines of your marriage, I still want you to go back to that broken one. I still want you to go back to that broken one. Now, all of this stuff that I was talking about this morning, all these relationships, and having you identify which relationship is which in your life, all of these things that I have been talking about this morning, all bring me to this point. Because this is the one point this morning that we need to just stop in our tracks and we need to start focusing on. We need to start focusing on right now. If this church wants to be a church that pursues kingdom work, if that's what we want to do, we have to stop and we have to start doing something today. We need to initiate meaningful relationships. Again, a word that we could apply all over the place. A meaningful, oh, this is meaningful, that's meaning. No. Meaningful relationships. What do I mean by that? I took a look at my life and I identified meaningful relationships in mine right now. I have 4 of them. Out of all the people I know a lot of you guys. Almost every single one of you I know. But out of all of the people I know, there's 4. And see, these people are completely different than every other relationship in my life. They're totally different, and I can identify that they are different. See, first of all, they're very, very equally yoked with me. And I'm not talking like, yeah, we both believe in Christ, cool. It's not just that kind of yoked. It's yoked down to the nitty-gritty. There are things when it gets down to the nuts and bolts of our belief that we agree on. And if we don't, it makes for one very good conversation, and usually we all come out at the same point. We don't argue it. We discuss it. And usually we view it through the eyes of Christ, and we can see where it is. So it's yoked to the point of of even that small stuff. Sometimes these people know me better than I know myself. They know when I walk out that door, if there's a situation right outside that door, they know how Teresa's going to react before she ever gets out that door. And I'll tell you what, sometimes they come running and tackle me so I don't get out that door because they know my reaction. That's how well they know me. I say, no, I would have been fine with it. They're like, no, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. Trust us? No, you wouldn't. They know me better than I know me. These are people that I run every single life decision by. Yes, I run them all by my husband. My husband and I discuss everything that we do. However, we have people that we look to. Whether it's buying a car, moving to a new house, whatever it is, we have people that we look to and we run these decisions by. We have people that will pray for us and we pray for them on a regular basis. Not just haphazardly once in a while when something comes up, but just all the time we're praying for each other. These are people who will flat out tell me, Teresa, you're being an idiot stick. He tells me that. I'm being an idiot stick. Because sometimes you just need to be told that you're being an idiot stick, don't you? Sometimes you just need to be told that. And see, these are people who have never betrayed me, who have never treated me badly, and we've disagreed and we've gotten angry with each other, but I'm telling you what, at the end of the day, respect for each other always wins out. It always, always wins out. They know my faults, they know my sins, they know my transgressions, and you know what? Never once has judgment crossed their mind, or does it cross mine. These are Christ-like relationships. I have 4. And I got a few more that I'm kind of working on. I'm starting to see that this works, and other people see that this works. So there's a few more that I'm kind of working on because I realize that this is what we need to do. We need to build a structure around us. Each and every one of us individually, and then each of us collectively. We need to build this structure around us of people. People who are our support system. People who are our wall. Literally, we need walls. Some of these people I'm talking about are a wall to spiritual attack on me. They're a wall. See, we need to build that. A support system of meaningful relationships. Because let me tell you why. My heart breaks often when I take a look at this next generation that's coming up below us. This next generation that's going to take over after we go, and they have so many means of connecting with each other, so many ways. It's so easy now. Nobody ever moves across the country even anymore because you can have them right in your face. And I'm thinking about somebody who lives in Hawaii. It's just right in your face. Like, it's so easy to connect with people. They have so many ways to connect. And then they have so many friends, and they have so many contacts. My daughter's got like 400 contacts in her phone. How do you call 400 different people? I don't even know. Like, I have like 50. But like, just so many ways to connect. And what's crazy is that year after year and week after week, I have these teenagers. Teenager after teenager after teenager after teenager will walk into my office, they'll sit down in my chair, they'll look at me and say, I feel so alone. Here's the thing. That's our fault. See, I don't know that we have been good enough models, that we have participated enough in quality, meaningful relationships in our life that they have something to follow. I don't know that we have. I don't know that we've been good role models. And see, this worldly concept of each to his own and stay out of each other's business. I mean, do you hear that? You hear that all the time. I watch that show, What Would You Do? And it kills me every time I hear somebody say, oh, that's none of my business. I don't want to get involved in somebody else's business. Stop out loud, and I'm just going to say it for what it is. That is wrong. It is our business. We are each other's business. Yes, we are, and especially if somebody is being treated unjustly. It is our business. We have to stop buying into this. Satan and this world wants us to buy into it because then we're just numb to what's going on if we buy into that. That's not what Christ intended for us. Not at all what he intended for us. So I'm challenging you today. What I want you to do today, right now today, when you walk out these doors, what I want you to do is I want you to go find one meaningful relationship. Go find one. Just one. That's all you know. That's all you need is one. Start with one. Here's the thing. You guys come in here week after week after week after week, and we tell you things like, have a relationship with God. Have a relationship. That's a great thing. I'm not saying that's wrong. Today, I'm not telling you that, though. I'm telling you to have a relationship with each other, because here's the thing that God did that's so cool. And I can't remember even what verse it came from, but they talk about how this world is like looking through a mirror of what that world is about. Well, about what eternity is. And back in the day, mirrors looked terrible. They were just a piece of metal, and they were very wavy, and it was barely the image, but you could see the image in it. And that's what he's done here. See, he's created us to have these relationships with each other, which are just a mirror image of what an intimate relationship with him is like. So he put us here together to live this together. And I'm telling you, these meaningful relationships in your life will only do one thing. They bring you closer to him. Now, for a second this morning, I do want to talk to those who are maybe not completely decided on this whole God thing. It's a journey. It's a walk. It takes a while. And maybe you just started coming to church. Maybe you don't even know why you're here. Maybe somebody drug you along this morning, and you're not even sure you want to be here. Maybe you're wondering about this faith thing, or wondering about this God thing, or wondering if it even fits into your life, or if it should fit into your life, or you just need to sort out what you do and don't believe because you just don't have any clue. I want you to go seek out a relationship like this. I want you to find somebody who's in that spot, that same spot with you, because I'm telling you, they're here. Find somebody who's in that same spot with you. Find somebody who will help you walk through this. Walk through it with them. Bounce things off of each other. Talk to each other about it. Because, see, here's the thing. Is that you don't want somebody who's going to tell you what you should believe, and God doesn't even want you to come to him because you felt like you had to, or somebody told you to, or it's the right thing to do, or the good thing to do. He's not even looking for you that way. He wants you to seek him out. He wants you to walk this road. He wants you to find out the truth for yourself. And then at the end, if you decide that that's him that you want, that's the way he wants you to go about it. So find somebody. Find somebody who's in that same spot with you and walk that path with them. Begin that meaningful relationship. And if you are already somebody who has, you can identify some meaningful relationships in your life right now. What I'm challenging you to this morning is expand it. I told you I have some other people that I'm working on, and they're starting to come in. It takes work. Like I said, relationships are a living thing. They take work. So start working on expanding those meaningful relationships so that in the end, we end up being this church of all of these meaningful relationships. That is the foundation by which Christ wants us to build this church on. Right? It's exactly what he's looking for. So start building those today. Would you stand with me and pray? Heavenly Father, it's a privilege to be in your presence this morning. It's a privilege to gather in your name this morning. And Father, for those who are gathering in your name in secret or have fear for gathering in your name this morning, Father, we just send out our prayers and our blessings to them. Father, just protect them so that they can continue your work. You know, we came in this morning first thing to this beautiful painted sky with this double rainbow in the background, and that's what I drove into. And Father, when I saw that, I could not help but to think, man, you've got your hand on this day, don't you? And you have your hand on every day. So, Father, remind us of that. Father, I want you to help us to seek out these meaningful relationships. If there are people in our life that we are not investing enough in today, Father, I want you to just keep putting them in our path. Just keep putting them in our path like a blazing bright light that we cannot avoid. We see in front of us, and we know that that is what you have intended for us. So, Father, I ask for us to grow as a church, to grow in relationship, so that we can serve you better. We ask all these things in your Son's precious name. Amen.